Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's Fire Engineering and Humpday Hangout with ISFSI, International Society of Fire Service Instructors. This month, I'm joined again by good friends, colleagues, and members of ISFSI, Damon Simmons and Brad French. And welcome those guys. If you've been around the block, you know these two gentlemen and all they contribute to the fire service and making it a better place for all of us. So lucky to have those guys on board, and we have a great show today. Before we start talking about our training topic for today, I want to kind of hit up we just got done with our FDIC board meeting. It was a great meeting, a great collaboration of efforts, and I can promise you this: the 2026 FDIC will be an impressive show. Each year, I don't know how they can do it, but Clarion and Fire Engineering seem to always take it to the next level each and every year. So in 2025, record attendance, as you saw as we walked the halls and you saw classes. I saw more of the full signs out this year, class full capacity. It's just a testament to what that show is all about and the training that's available there. So second to none, and so it's going to be another great experience. This year in 2026, I should say, will be also the 25-year anniversary of 9/11. It's crazy to think that we've been 25 years from that event that's changed history for us and the fire service. Um, but I know that there'll be a lot of stuff there to memorialize and to honor that event in our history and what it meant to the fire service. So I'll look for that there. And registration is starting now. Some of the different programs you can get into where you can get the benefits from early registration and buying those packages for multiple members of your department is available now. So make sure you guys are looking for those dates. Classes will be coming out soon, and it'll be here in April before we know it. So exciting stuff there. The other thing I want to talk about is everyone out there listening. If you have not submitted, if you have not written an article for fire engineering, I encourage you to do it. It doesn't have to be something great. It doesn't have to be something that's overwhelming, that's really over the top in terms of, scholastic or anything like that. What it has to be is something that's real and relevant. So if you've run a call that's, unique, that's, been an eye-opening experience to your department, if you've done a training that's just challenged you and you want to share it, or if you're doing something in your department with a program that's new and innovative, share it so that everybody in the fire service benefits from it. And if you're not a writer, video it. Take a little 30, 40, 60-second clip of yourself walking around your new apparatus. And submit those things, right? The fire engineering wants that content because we want to share what the fire service is doing, right? And the best way to do that is to hear from the people that are listening to these shows like this, reading the magazine, getting that online content, and using it to improve their fire service. So if, if you're only listening to myself, and Brad, you're only getting a small clip of what's going on. We want to hear from everybody. So make sure you guys are doing those sort of things. And if you need help, there's tons of people at Fire Engineering that can help you with their authorship and wordsmanship and all that sort of stuff. So without any further ado, we'll get into today's topic. And so, we're here in August, and we're a couple weeks out from when school's starting for a lot of people. And so it's a great time for us as training officers to start thinking about school starting again for us in January, when typically our training calendars reset, right? So, we try to set up a calendar for the year to our best abilities. We try to meet those compliance needs and different things. And then we know that hiccups and schedules get thrown off, and we're trying to make stuff up and scramble to the last minute to ensure that we got everything we wanted to get done in 2025 done. So now is a great time to start thinking about those things. So from your guys' perspectives, I mean, when you guys start developing your training calendars and you start thinking about those sort of things, Damon from Oakland, what do what are your benchmarks? Like, how do you set your calendar up? And when does Oakland get that ice rescue training in that you guys have to have done, right?
That's an excellent question. I'll make sure and add that to the list of
Can you
topics.
get that on the calendar for next year?
I will. I'll get that along with responding when there's blizzards on our calendar. Even though there are certain parts of California at the higher elevations where we do get snow. But excellent question there. And as you mentioned, school is getting ready to start for a lot of individuals. School has started back up. I mean, most of us, we probably can remember and are old enough to when school always started on the day after Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward now, it starts in August. I will say, from our perspective as fire service personnel, we know that we are in school year round. There's never a day or time period where school is out for us because we are responding to emergency calls 24/7, 365. Therefore, we need to make sure our people are properly trained and educated, and especially, three of us as chief officers who are not necessarily engaging in activities at the task level. We need to make sure that men and women who are out there on the fire engines, fire trucks, and rescue units have the requisite skill set that can be successful. So one of the things that we do here in the city of Oakland is that I work with the training division chief. We have a new training chief, and we meet on a regular basis discussing training and education on a quarterly basis. And then what we do in terms of our master calendar, we have an Excel spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, we have different tabs that we outline training by quarters. We have training and education that's related to NFPA 1410. We also have some standards, back to basic activities that we do each quarter. As a matter of fact, this quarter, we're actually starting today. We're delivering our new round of back to basics training and education where we're focusing on big line operations, Mayday, RIC, and also some primary residential search operations. And then also we have some mandatory training on the part of the city that we are required to do, especially as supervisors. So we meet on a regular basis, and then we put together a master calendar for the year. And as you all know, things come up, new training, some type of mandate where we have to pivot, but nevertheless, we have a written plan to help guide us with our training and delivery year round here in the city of Oakland and Oakland Fire Department.
I like it. I like it. I like the part of it that you said is, you can be dynamic, right? Like we have to, if there's one thing about the fire service, it's constantly evolving and changing. So we have to also have that wiggle room in there to be able to say, hey, listen, this is an opportunity that we didn't see in January when the calendar went into effect. So we're going to kind of pivot and make that transition. So Brad, what about Dayton? What are you guys doing? How do you guys plan out your calendar and set up yourself for success in your training?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that go into that, and some of that, goes back to those of us in leadership positions to make sure we're keeping our ears, our eyes and ears open as far as the broader fire service. Kind of what some of those hot topics are, what's really driving the conversation across the fire service, and how that is applicable to us at the local level. So I think some of that's driven from the top, but also some of the best ideas, probably oftentimes the best ideas, are driven, are driven from other levels of the organization, the boots on the ground that are out there, going to these calls, and they might be noticing things, and a department having some type of a mechanism or communication stream upward with training ideas. Hey, look, what about if we do this next year? What about if we, look at this new prop or something like that? So, as they say, the water boils from the bottom up. Sometimes some of the best training ideas might not come from us in leadership positions, and when those cool ideas come along, we need to be in a position to be able to pivot and make, empower that idea and make that happen. But I also think I'm really big on target hazards. I always think that that's a big thing every year, scheduling tours, getting your folks out on the street, in the buildings, not just in a congregate setting at a training center with a specified drill or doing stuff, in a structured way at the company level, but just getting out into the district. I'm always huge on that, and getting out and into your first two districts and into your buildings. And that's something that can often be driven and scheduled through a formal training division as well. And then the other would be, maybe are there any special projects coming up? For example, we want to try to maintain a good level of training all the time. But say, for example, your organization has an ISO visit that's known to be coming up that next year, or maybe 2 years down the road, or something like that. Trying to curtail some of that training in terms of some of the thresholds that are set there, and maybe you have a project that you've wanted to do several years for training, but hey, look, we need to put this one on the front burner because we've got X, Y, and Z project coming up that's really going to curtail well with. So I think a bunch of different things drive it. I think it's us in leadership positions keeping our eyes and ears open to the industry, and making sure that we're seeing beyond our four walls of our organization, and bringing those ideas back, and empowering our training division to create that content, and ensure that consistency is there across shifts and platoons and different drills. But also being very cognizant of the fact that great ideas are very likely to come up through the organization. And when that happens, we got to grab that lightning in a bottle and make sure that that gets used and turned around into real training. Because the worst thing is obviously for people organizationally to think, oh, well, I don't, I'm not going to worry about what we're training on. They'll tell us what to train on. Well, that may sometimes be the case, but oftentimes great ideas come to us, and we need to be able to act on them when they do.
No, I love everything you said there, and I think to your point of like listening to your people, and so that kind of brings me to my next point for you guys is like, so people come to us, right? They say, hey, listen, you guys are the training department, training officers, you guys are company officers, whatever in your departments. So you guys have the leadership influence. How do we get that needs assessment? Like, what does that look like? Because, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, I'll have a bunch of people to come to me and say, well, I want to take all these tech rescue trainings. Cool. But we need to work on this. Like, and it might be the most basic thing of pulling a hand line, right? Like, that's the fundamental basics. So how do you balance the needs with the wants of your department?
So I'll jump on that one really quick, because something that you said just really immediately shot a phrase to the top of my mind, and it's something that I've heard Pete Van Dorp, who we all know well, say many times, which is, you have to get really good at the box. People always want to think outside the box. And I remember him telling me that one time, or maybe he said it in a class, and, well, I don't want you thinking outside the box quite yet until you're really, really good at the box. You have to keep a focus on those fundamental skills and be really good at those fundamental skills before some of that other stuff can come along. And again, as you said, I also am a huge fan of empowering people that are passionate and enthusiastic. They come to you with training ideas about, just like you said, hey, I want to go to X, Y, and Z technical rescue class. Well, that's fantastic if that person or that company or that scenario lends itself to that. But if this is a person or a company or an arrangement or a situation where we're not there yet, we're not going to shoot for the moon on some of this training until we're really good at the day-to-day stuff, really good at those foundational, fundamental firefighting skills, and being good at the box before we're thinking outside the box.
No, I like that. That's great. Demond, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, just adding on to what Brad stated, here in Oakland Fire Department, we make sure we are proficient at those basics: engine company operations, truck company operations, incident management, ICS, fire dynamics, building construction, in the fire service. Those are our bread and butter operations. Those are the things that we have to know day in and day out and be keen on, and to ensure that when we arrive on scene, whether it's a room and content fire or a greater alarm incident, we are operating in a safe and efficient, effective manner, and equally important that we all come home each day. Now, when we talk about needs versus wants, in every organization, we have a core group of individuals who are eager to provide training, deliver training and education to our personnel. And then quite frankly, there are some people in leadership positions, company and chief officers, where we have to pull, beg, threaten to make sure that they're doing their job in terms of training the men and women who are riding in the back seats, firefighters, engineers, and firefighter paramedics to do their jobs. So for us, once we get past or have satisfied those mandates, those essentials, then we start looking at those desirables, those wants. So for example, here in the city of Oakland, what we've been doing over the last year or so is we've been sending a core group of individuals back to North Carolina for the SCBA, I think they call it smoke diver school.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've asked those individuals who we have paid to go back is to come back to the organization and provide training and education to the rest of them. Brad mentioned about a lot of great training topics and ideas come from the bottom up. Absolutely. I'm fortunate that here in Oakland Fire Department, I got some great group of individuals, firefighters and company officers, who are come to the training chief, come to me and say, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? And 99.9% of the time, my answer is always yes, followed by let me know what resources you need. And if there's some limitations on resources, financial resources, because unfortunately right now we're going through some dire times here in the city of Oakland. Outside of that, I make it happen. There's almost never an absolute no unless it's cost prohibitive in terms of us providing that training and education. So that's how we look at those needs versus wants versus those desires. Satisfying those basics, as Brad mentioned, staying within the box, making sure that you have every small box or sub box in the bigger box checked off, and those essentials, and then we start expanding out. One of the things that we're also looking at is because of the proliferation of alternative energy systems in homes and cars, we are working with Tesla and a few other individuals, organizations, to make sure that our members are proficient in terms of what to do versus what not to do when they're responding to electrical fire. I had a battalion chief come to me a few weeks ago, actually a few months ago, and he wanted to purchase a EV nozzle and an EV blanket. Answer was an absolute yes. Now, fast forward a few weeks ago, we're hearing some of the things that are coming back in regards to the use of EV blankets. So we've sort of taken a pause from that. But the point is, from what's coming from the bottom is oftentimes right in line with the needs and expectations of the organization.
Yeah, just to add one more, and
Yeah.
really, what Damon was just saying is kind of the same thing. We just recently had a situation where it doesn't just limit itself at trainings, right? Tactical change can certainly be something that comes up through the organization from the bottom or from the mid level up to the chief officers of the organization. We recently just made a pretty significant decision and are making a large financial commitment to a change in our attack package. For our attack hose lines, and that absolutely was driven by some of our, hard charging, hallway crawling lieutenants that put a great presentation and a great package together. Came to headquarters, sold it, had the figures, had the facts, had the videos of how they were moving and GPM flows and all that kind of stuff. And all we had to do was say, "Wow, yes, absolutely, let's make it happen."
Exactly.
No, I think, and I was talking about this in Canada about 2 months ago about cultural change through training. And I think to your guys' point, when you let that water boil from the bottom up and you listen, and then where you can, right? Not every time can you say yes, and not every time does it make sense to implement said change. But when you can listen to the people and say, hey, listen, this is going to make my job more effective, my job safer, and the community better, then it's our job, right, to do those sort of things. It's funny because in my eyes, like, response is number one, right? Everybody agrees response is number one thing we do, and then in my eyes, like, number two is training. So how do you? And that's not always aligns with the other divisions of the fire department, as we all know. As much as we like to say, let's block out the rest of the day for training, we know there's other things that have to be done. How do you guys balance that with the demands of the other, leadership team of your departments? Like, right, like, we all have good relationships with the other people we work with, I'm sure. But how do you find that balance to where, the fire marshal's coming in, or that the community risk reduction office is saying, hey, listen, I got to have XYZ amount of hours for inspections, or I need the companies out doing this. And then in the operations or training side, we're saying, well, no, I got to have them pulling hose, and I got to have them making hydrant connections and doing search drills, because that's what's most important. So how, you guys ever find yourselves out of balance, or how do you guys, how would you recommend assisting with those type of things to make sure that, the best laid plan doesn't get out of whack because of the demands of the organization potentially?
Yeah.
So-
Not easy.
Yeah.
It is
Good.
definitely not easy. There is no simple formula. There's no technology out there that'll solve all the issues that we have, or challenges. Challenge is probably a better word when it comes to the intersection of training, community risk reduction, EMS, and everything else that we have to do within a 24 or 48-hour period, depending on what your schedule is. Here in the city of Oakland, what we have found to be most effective to ensure that we have that balance is real simple. Number one is that we communicate across different divisions. Training division, they come to me and say, hey, Chief, this is what we got going on. Can we make it happen? Tell them to check the master calendar, make sure there's nothing on the master calendar. I communicate with the other chief officers who are responsible for the other divisions, letting them know this is what's going on. And also at the same time, asking them, what do they need from us? For example, we had a conversation yesterday with our chief who's in charge of our emergency management. There are some things that she wants to add to the upcoming Recruit Academy. Simple conversation. And at the end, we were able to satisfy the needs of the training division for the upcoming recruit class, and then the needs of our emergency management services division. Now, from a technology component or perspective that I would add into that to help fine tune that balance and ensure all needs are being met is that we use Microsoft Outlook, we use Microsoft Calendar, and post all of our activities for each day on that calendar so that individuals can see what's going on. And then if someone from EMS or someone from community risk reduction, fire prevention, they want to add something that has an impact on the companies, they just simply check the master calendar and make sure if that day or week or that time period is appropriate to make it happen. And then also we make sure we stay within the rules and regulations or commentary that's outlined in our MOU for a number of companies and personnel that can be out of service each day.
Yeah, I'll when it comes to take community risk reduction, for example, and I think that's a great one to where you can kind of draw a little bit of a bridge here is it's all in how you look at it, right? It's all the lens in which you look at it. If I have people out doing, for example, fire hydrant checks or something like that, or maybe even inspections, while they're there, maybe they've completed an inspection at one building, and while they're there, they're walking around and they're looking at FDCs at adjacent buildings, and they're looking at roll up doors and talking about cut patterns and stuff like that, and they're looking at different forcible entry challenges. And even while they're out doing fire hydrant checks or something like that, they're looking at buildings, they're looking at the houses, they're talking about the bedrooms in this house are probably there. My stairwell in this house is probably here because this is the window that I'm seeing on this Bravo side. Here's my telltale signs of a basement. You can take those community risk reduction activities while you're out and about doing those mandated things, those other things, other duties as assigned, as we all joke about, those other things that they're doing, and make those into training opportunities. And in a lot of cases, they can even literally be documented as training opportunities. If we have people out doing a district familiarization, and while they're checking hydrants or while they're out doing some inspections or something like that, there's nothing to say that there aren't circumstances in which one of those two things can kind of be intertwined into one. So I think those CRR opportunities, particularly as it relates to fire prevention, are training opportunities, and it's just the lens that you're looking at them in.
Correct. And adding to that, those going back to the here in Oakland Fire Department, that's the expectation of company officers on a regular basis to go out, canvass their district, walk these buildings, discuss engine and truck placement, discuss building construction features, look at components that are tied in or associated with the fire protection system to make sure that they are well informed in regards to what's going on. That's number one. And those are things that we don't put on the master calendar. We don't schedule. That's just an expectation of a company officer here in the Oakland Fire Department. Then also tying back in, we were just talking about needs and wants at the company level. And I go back to my days when I was a battalion chief working in the downtown area. The expectation that I placed on those company officers is that our training and education was based on what was in our district. So I worked in a district where we had high-rise buildings. I worked in a district that's home to one of the largest ports on the West Coast. Worked in a district that has a BART, that's above and below grade subway system, and in the area where we have numerous hazardous materials. So that would be one thing that those who are out there listening, if you are in need of a training and education idea, thought, is to look at what's in your district. If you have a bunch of mid-rises in your district, a bunch of buildings in your district that have basements, that's the appropriate training and education that you need to focus on at a minimum.
No, I agree. I like, so many things. I was like typing stuff out and just making little notes myself here. I think, like you said, empowering the company officers, and I want to talk about that here in a second about how do we make sure there's time for that for the company officer training. And I think too, like, the communication aspect of it, I've seen departments where, they're doing vehicle rescue training and they incorporate their EMS into it and they're able to give CEUs for like their EMS training, right? Their department is able to facilitate that. Maybe it's a tech rescue thing and they incorporate some packaging. And so, they've combined that. So they're, killing two birds with one stone, similar to the CRR thing. Hey, you're going to be out doing inspections while you're there. Why don't you as a company talk about doing the 360, talking about those sort of things, getting inside, seeing those suppression systems, seeing the alarm systems. I think there's a lot of things too that, we take for granted as people that have been doing the job for a few years. I'll tell this quick story, it goes back to the forced reader. analogy of the have to knows, the must knows, the nice to knows, and then the they're okay to knows type things. And so I was big departed part of my department was my role was the training, and so I go outside and I see one of my guys that's been there about 2-3 months in a harness, getting ready to rappel, right? Getting ready to be lowered in a rope rescue system. And this guy's about 22 years old, just came out of the academy. And, and his battalion chief, or battalion chief now, is doing this rescue scenario. He's like, hey, look at it. We got this whole thing set up. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so, and at the end of it, it was like, yeah, it was a great little training. And I kudos for putting it together. But that 2 or 3 month guy wasn't at the point to be in a harness getting lowered to start doing patient packaging, right? He was at the, hey, I still need to figure out how to make an SCBA, connection for a Mayday. I need to be doing hose pulls and the confidence things to get the foundation to Brad's point of the box, getting those box skills. And so I think sometimes too is, with these company officers is reminding them, hey, listen, don't take for granted what you know. You have a wealth of information in your head. And so don't be afraid to talk about a fire alarm panel, and don't be afraid to talk about a dry system. And what, I remember being a company officer and walking into a building and there was a compressor on the third floor, and one of the firefighters with me is like, why is there a compressor up here? What are they filling with air? And I'm like, it's a dry system. Shame on me for not, it was a float guy in, but still shame on me and shame on the department that wasn't part of our routine training program that would educate people. And we have tons of dry systems in the Midwest, right? Because of the sprinkled attic. So I think those sort of things that, you guys keep hitting on, talking about, like taking the time in those impromptu trainings to just do that, just in time or on the job trainings really will enhance your department's operations and effectiveness, because, you know, what you guys know, what the company officers, battalion chiefs, and those leadership of your department knows is invaluable and must be shared. So I know I went on a tangent there. I apologize for that, but I just want to make sure that we hit that point, because I think too many times as fire officers, we just think that everybody knows what we know, and the reality is they don't. And it's too late when we're retired to share that information. So I don't know if you guys want to hit on that at all, or Brad, it looks like you got something.
Yeah, well, something you said really resonated with me, and we've talked about this, before over the years, certainly. But the concept of empowering those younger members to not only, train on that stuff, but then also turn around and present that stuff to their crews, and that sometimes is an awkward social dynamic depending upon the department culture and things like that. But I also think there's a lot of value in early in people's careers, empowering them to be a part of that crew and be a part of that discussion. And I think that's great for professional development. I think it's great on all sides. I'll use the SCBA example that you just brought up, Brian. Hey, look, hey, kid. Next day, you're going to give us a training on SCBA, EBSS connections and zero visibility with your gloves on. And like, what's that guy going to do? That young guy is going to go read every shred of that manual. He's going to practice the stuff and is going to show back up the next day and is going to give that training. And then when that training occurs, so many things are happening at the same time. Number one, everybody's learning, right? Everybody's learning that skill. Also, everyone in the crew is realizing that this young guy has something to offer and knows what they're talking about. And then that young person gets to kind of, show his stuff to this crew, and maybe, builds that kind of esprit de corps, that company camaraderie, and really everybody wins. And so sometimes, not every time, right? It's certainly the company officer, the senior members, the dynamic of who's going to lead training is that's a moving thing. It's oftentimes going to be the officer or some type of a designated instructor, but there's certainly nothing wrong with empowering those younger members to not only participate in the training, but to also help lead it, or at least be in some type of a delivery role, because that's also, they're going to feel more in the club, if you will, right out of the chute. Earlier in their career, they're going to have more organizational buy-in by getting to show their stuff a little bit too. And really everybody wins in that scenario.
Exactly. And adding on to that example that Brad just mentioned, is that for that young man or young woman where the expectation is that they assist with delivering training and education, is that it becomes part of that culture, especially those organizations where that's not the case. Because now when that young man or young woman, when he or she becomes a company officer, they're going to have that same expectation of that new firefighter. Hey, when I was probationary firefighter, or 1 year, 2 year, 3 years on the job, my company officer expected that I participate as a facilitator in training and education. So for those organizations out there where you don't have a solid training plan, training is and education is hit or miss, or the expectation is that we only do training and education that comes from the training chief or the fire chief, this is another way that doesn't cost the organization anything financially to ensure operational readiness.
No, I love it. We've always said like words matter, things matter, and how we present ourselves matter. And so one of the things we did at my department is I started implementing. They had to do training as part of their promotional process for captain. And so it's funny because the first time we did it, we did the water can, and I said, give me a 5 to 10 minute presentation on the water can. And of course, there was one person that got promoted. There was about 7 people in the process. But I can tell you this, at the end of it, there was more people in my department that were educated on the use of a water can, what its capabilities were, how to fill it, and so then the next one we did SCBA and they did the same thing. And so and guys would ask me, they're like, well, that was kind of different. Like, why'd you do that? I'm like, win, lose or draw. Now everybody's better in this department going through that process. And so it's not just about mastering the process, but becoming better because of it. So, and then they also know from my perspective, what's important in the fire service is you as an company officer being able to lead your people and train them, as well as be able to mitigate and manage an incident for the safety of the public and the safety of the firefighters. Those are the two main priorities that I have from the operations role, right? So like they know that from the get-go. I know we're getting a little off the calendar topic, but I think those sort of things, to your guys' points, really make a difference. So let me ask you this then. So back to the calendar and scheduling. Should we, or do we allow time for the company officers to be company officers and train their people? And so how do we put that into a calendar when, I can tell you from my department and my perspectives, like our days are full, right? Like they get their truck checks and things and they're busy doing things. And we put training in there, but do we need to block out time for the company officers to just say, here's your 2 hours or here's your how do you guys play that in? Or
Yes,
I'll let Brad go first. Go ahead, Brad.
I think the short answer to that is yes, absolutely. But that doesn't mean, so you could go one of two ways with that. You could just completely leave it open ended, and then that company officer could come up with whatever training they want in whatever format they want. But something that you can also breathe some consistency across shifts and platoons and things like that is for the training division to provide maybe a template or some lesson plans or some guidance. And then that company officer at the company level can kind of curtail that. They can add a flair of their own experiences, or hey, look, this one incident happened one time, and that's how this relates to this training topic. And so, again, organic training at the company level is fantastic as well and needs to continue to happen. But the training division can at least sprinkle some seeds of guidance and then let it grow from there at the company level.
Yeah. Looks like we lost him for a second. Nevertheless, we'll continue.
That's okay. He'll come back. Go ahead, Damon.
Yeah, Brad. There you go.
Sorry, I lost you for a second. I don't know what happened.
No worries. Absolutely. Regardless if you work for an organization that has what we call a structured day, 8 to 5, 8 to 6, or unstructured day, it's imperative that us as chief officers not only allow but expect those company officers to identify training and education at the company level or even at the battalion level. Because while we are only out there in the field when there's a significant emergency or every now and then when we go out and observe and participate in training and education, the company officers, they know the strengths and weaknesses of the individuals that are assigned to them. Now, I call it the 222 rule. When I was a company officer, and as a battalion chief.
So hold on, Devon. For anybody listening, I've heard this. Make sure you write this down because I love this. I use this with all my company officers. So sorry, I want to make sure everybody's listening. Write this down. Go ahead, Devon. This is awesome.
I keep it simple. I call it the 222. There's 24 hours in a day. When I was a company officer, the expectation to the crew, give me 2 hours. I'll give you 22 hours. And during that 24-hour period, the residents who use our 911 system, who need us, they could intervene any point in time, take away. If we think about it, you take the busiest company in America. They're running 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 calls a day. Unless you are doing EMS transport, total job time, TJT, for most of us on EMS calls, commercial alarms, is about 10 to 12 minutes. And so when I was a company officer, we did 2 hours a day of training and education. And it wasn't always going out in the field. Sometimes it would be in the back of the station. Worked at Station 1, our technical rescue station. A lot of times we did stuff in the app bay, out in the backyard. Many other occasions we were out in our first due district and second due district doing training and education. And we still were able to make it happen. So those company officers out there, the 222 rule, this requires some pre-planning on your part to get that in each day. And I'm not looking at it from a perspective of NFPA, minimum 2 hours a day, or ISO, whatever those accreditation agencies that are out there. Now, I like the fact that they have that highlighted, because all it does is just furthers my case when I put out that expectation. But that is one way to ensure our men and women are operationally ready. And this is also where company officers and battalion chiefs have to work together. One of the things we just started here at the Oakland Fire Department is that we put together a plan where each month the training division will send out a lesson plan for company officer training and education, where expectations the company officer or his or her designee will deliver that training and education. And then our operations division also each month send out a lesson plan for a topic that the battalion chief, he or she, is expected to facilitate. So one of the things that gets us in trouble is that we try and complicate things. The other thing that gets us in trouble is that we are waiting on someone else to give us what ideas and thoughts and mandates. But that is the requirement, expectations of company officers in Oakland Fire Department is 2 hours a day of training and education. So remember, 222. It can't happen.
Love it, love it, love it. What about this, guy? So, like, we obviously, you guys talked about it, but the compliance trainings, like, right, like we have to do, there's a certain amount of, like, hey, I got to do bloodborne pathogen, I got to do, if you guys found ways, and not just on the compliance trainings that we call them the boring trainings, whatever, but how do you guys use technology to augment your calendar to accomplish more, given the demands that we're facing as firefighters?
Go ahead, Damon.
Technology. Wow.
Well, I tell you, I think when it comes to honestly, I hate to say it, but you go to the asynchronous training when it comes to that. You go to the learning management systems. You go to, and I hate that in a way, because then you've got that stuff that nobody's paying attention to, and that's not a good situation. But I mean, like you said, the annual HIPAA training, the annual bloodborne pathogen training, the annual, maybe it's a hazmat refresher, something like that. It's got to live somewhere. And if you have only valuable minutes in person in a training division to actually bring companies offline and go to them, you're probably not going to burn those valuable minutes with some of those topics. And so I don't know a good answer for it, but I know in our organization and in a lot of organizations, those kind of mandated annual things, some of those less exciting things just live in an asynchronous environment in a learning management system, and they get to them when they get to them, and they're probably, push and play and then going and doing something else for a while and coming back and pushing that they're promised they're still watching, and all that kind of challenges that come with that type of an arrangement. But again, if we only have a finite number of opportunities to actually deliver in-person training, dynamic, hard-hitting stuff, we've got to keep it at the stuff that's going to be, tactical, really impactful stuff that's going to resonate with them. So that's probably not a very good answer, but
no, but Brad,
it's reality.
Yeah. And Brad, you are spot on. LMS, learning management systems, they are a great companion They allow us to some of that important, but if we had to put on the food chain stuff that's not a high priority, that is a way to deliver that. But one thing I would offer with that is to, and I call that passive learning, but revert it and convert it to active learning is that every so often, those set of classes that we assign to Vector Solutions or whatever LMS that you're using, as company chief officers, company officers and battalion chiefs, follow up with small group discussions on what was discussed in those videos or presentations that were presented in a passive or LMS setting to ensure that learning actually took place. I look at them as companions and definitely not in lieu of or replacement, good old fashioned conversations in person or via Teams or Zooms where humans are discussing a topic or theme that's fire service related.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of valuable stuff you can use, and again, we've utilized learning management systems for years, as certainly any fire department does, or most fire departments do. But I've also butted heads with plenty of people over the years because I am not one that thinks you can ever replace good, dynamic, enthusiastic, hard-hitting training, me to you, right in front of you, and we're talking it out, and we're doing hands-on stuff. And I've caused some friction over the years with prerequisite trainings ahead of in-person trainings and things like that, and it's because there's just nothing that can replace it. There's even now there's people doing they're on Zoom meetings somewhere where they've got another window open somewhere and they're all doing something that they're all only half paying attention, and it's just we lose something when it's not in person, but we've got to get all of these things done.
Exactly.
I like to Damon's point, is that an LMS can be a companion, right? And I think that's what it is. A plug here, Fire Engineering Training has a great LMS platform out there. It's got some of the best training instructors, FDIC instructors doing different programs and trainings. And they have a variety of different stuff in there, right? From micro learnings that are a couple minutes to, full on programs. But I think that's the key, right? Is no one wants to go to the training grounds and not be successful. And so for me, I see those LMSs, one, to the point they check the box for some of the stuff that, the annual compliance things that we all have to do. But they also can set our crews up for success, right? So I can send out, a video on here's the hose pulls, and those sort of things, if we're going to do some engine operations trainings or if we're going to do some ladder trainings or search trainings, so that they know the goals and objectives ahead of time so they can be successful. I'm sure you guys have seen it. I've seen it in my own organization. It's last month we were doing rope rescue training. And so, it's on the calendar. So, we're doing it the third week of the month. And the first 2 weeks of the month, I go to every station and there's ropes out, there's, hardware out, then I'm like, guys, what are we doing? Like, well, we know we're doing that rope rescue and they don't want to disappoint. That's why I appreciate that. It makes you feel good. They don't want to disappoint the guy. But the point of it is we should be doing that all year long. I mean, it should be a company level basis all year long. So, I think people want to be set up for success. And I definitely think the technology aspect of it for us can really come into play and help those things out.
One last thing on that, Brian, is and again, I don't want to sound like I'm kind of talking poorly about that type of thing, but I think that the issue is we also have to make sure that as training leaders in the organizations, we are putting really good stuff on those LMS systems as well, right? Because if not, then our folks are conditioned to think that anything that's getting assigned over here is not that important to pay attention to. So while that may be where some of that stuff lives, we also can we can keep them guessing, if you will, that there's some really good stuff that's on there as well. So hopefully they're not preconditioned to just tune out immediately when they tune into that.
No, that's an excellent point, is that if everything boring's on that plan,
Right.
no one's going to go to it for anything good. So yeah, no, it's a great point. So let me ask you guys about this. So as we go through the calendar, right, we know we're going to have certain things we're going to have to do. We know we're going to probably do some live burn evolutions. We're going to have to do some, engine ops, truck ops, searching things. We try to plan those in the certain months. We try to leave open, maybe fire prevention. We know October's a busy month for PR and things like that. how do we still create one, how do we create excitement for some of those less desirable trainings so that everybody feels engaged? And then how can we maybe use delegation to accomplish more? And I see those kind of playing together, right? Like you kind of alluded to it a little earlier, like, hey, the new guy is going to teach us about SCBA, but is there a formalized plan in your training so the training officer is not delivering everything?
So for us, we have a small staff at our training division, so we rely heavily on company officers and firefighters to actually serve as facilitators for training and education. Now, the motivation piece, once again, I look at things as simple as possible, and I tell folks whether it's a CPR refresher training or live fire training, what you learn in the training environment plays a significant role in operational readiness, delivering a high level of service, and making sure that you come home or go home in the same capacity that you came to work. I can't think of any other higher or more rewarding factor in terms of motivation than that. Operational readiness, serving the residents in a given community, and then making sure that you return home at the end of your shift to your loved ones at home, your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, kids, and so on.
And when it comes to various topics and things like that, I think, and again, some training is just, it's going to have to be company level training. The company officer is going to have to deliver that training, no matter whether they're jazzed about that particular topic or not. Sometimes that's just going to be the way it is. But everybody, you find a topic in the fire service, and somewhere somebody in your organization is probably excited about that topic somewhere, right? Even like code stuff. So there's somebody in your organization probably. Well, I mean, maybe not in some smaller organizations, but more than likely there's somebody that's jazzed up about plans reviews. There's somebody that's jazzed up about fire prevention. There's somebody that's jazzed up about tech rescue and hazmat and ground ladders and forcible entry and hose line movement and stuff like that. And so trying to align the training delivery with people that's their thing, because otherwise you're just trying to, jam a square peg in a round hole, and it just becomes not super effective. Sometimes we have no choice, but if you can find the people in your organization that are super jazzed about a particular topic, and if they can't deliver that training, maybe across all stations and platoons, maybe that's logistically not possible. Maybe that's the kind of thing where you capture that and then you put that onto that learning management system or something like that, to where whoever's delivering that training is someone that actually cares about it. Because when that's not the case, that shines through in a heartbeat.
Yeah, 100%. I think to your point, empowering people. I sat in a class a couple years ago at FDIC on hazmat, and I'm not a huge hazmat person. It's not the thing, but I have to do it with my job. And it was a guy, Toby Frost from Indiana, and super smart guy, but he made it so palatable and fun and engaging that I kind of honestly forgot I was in a hazmat class, because it was about calls and stuff that we'd see. And so, I think to your guys' point is, when you lay out your calendar for the year, as you're doing those sort of things as the training officer, maybe you're in your head, you're putting this together like, hey, we're going to do something like, like Damon was saying, big line operations, 2.5 movement, 2.5, things like that. Maybe I know that Captain X, Y, and Z at Station 2, that's his thing. So, that class is going to be.
We'll pull them onto days. We'll pull them onto days for a while to let, if we have somebody that's on platoon shift and they're really passionate about a topic, we'll pull them onto days for a couple of weeks so they can be the voice across all of the training events.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely a luxury, Brad, to have. So whatever you're doing, so whatever you're doing to keep that, please keep that going. And this is where ISFSI comes in, is that no matter what the topic is, it could be a topic that we're all excited about, but if the instructor, he or she, is not enthused, or they're using maybe some outdated delivery methods, learning may not take place. And this is where we need 21st century instructors to use relevant teaching methods, modalities, motivational points, incorporating or integrating technology, incorporating case studies and other type of relevant components to make an otherwise mundane topic that's important, fun, and at the end, actual learning will take place. Unfortunately, there's no quick fix recipe to make that happen, but those are things that we have to do. And in our organization, we talk a lot about succession planning, and I rely on a lot of times I'll tell the veterans, old timers that are running programs and training is to grab a new person in the organization and start mentoring him or her, allowing them to be part of the planning process, allowing them to be part of the delivery process, so that we don't lose that organizational or institutional knowledge. And then also, we were all there one day as new firefighters, and think about that veteran firefighter that you looked up to in your organization, that and he or she asked you to deliver training and education, or he or she asked you about a particular engine or truck company operation, the type of excitement that it brought you to have someone who you look up to asking you questions, and asking questions in a way that they truly cared about you, and they want to learn something from you. Once again, those are things that don't cost your organization any money, that in some cases we need to start doing across the American Fire Service or International Fire Service. In other cases, we need to continue doing across the International Fire Service.
No, I agree. I agree with everything you guys are saying. We've been going right at about 50 something minutes here, fellas. So we'll wrap this thing up. Any final thoughts, guys? Brad, Damon, final thoughts on setting up a training calendar, training? I mean, just,
No, I
somebody's blowing us
think this
off.
has been a great discussion. Yes, sorry, you got a siren going by me here at headquarters. A question that came up in the chat there. The chief from Cherry, Illinois, brought up about training with auto aid and mutual aid, and I think that's a good one as well. I will admit that we don't do as well with that as we should, but that kind of cross coordination of training calendars with other surrounding departments is something that's an important piece to take into consideration as well. So yeah, that's again, introspectively within our organization, we absolutely have good relationships with our surrounding partners and our auto aid partners, and we have some of that, even a training piece formalized into different agreements and things like that. But sometimes one thing leads to another, and we don't end up getting quite the sets and reps that we should with our neighbors. So that's another challenge as well.
Mm-hmm. So adding on to that, out in Alameda County, we have a county training officers association, and they meet once a month, and they do a great job of coordinating and collaborating on training and education. Where we do have a gap, and to the gentleman's question that was posted in the chat, is that as an organization, we do, Brad, as you mentioned, we do a poor job of training with surrounding organizations on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, we have a city, a town, Piedmont, which is surrounded on all four corners by the city of Oakland, and we do very little training and education with them. And that's one of the things that we're trying to change as you move into the latter half, 2025 and 2026, is that mutual training. But when we get to it, at the end of the day, the expectations, company officers, battalion chiefs, it starts and stops with you as it relates to making sure that the men and women are operationally ready. And for those of us who are district chiefs, assistant chiefs, deputy chiefs, and fire chiefs, it's imperative that we provide the resources so that the individuals who are in the companies can deliver the training and education, receive the training and education, so that they can maintain operational readiness. And then from a technology perspective, if you have nothing in your organization other than a computer, from a technology perspective, Microsoft Excel, create spreadsheets so that you have something that you can reference. Okay, month one, we're going to do this. Month two, we're going to do that. In month one, this is going to be the instructor for ropes and knots. In month two, this is going to be the instructor for 2 1/4, 2 1/2 hose line operations. Month three, ladders. You have it there. And that could be part of your institution's playbook for all things training and education.
No, I love it. I think it's good. It's been a great conversation, guys. I've reflected back on on my own calendars and things. I think the other part of it too, just wrapping up, is at the end of the year, look back on that calendar. How successful was it? Was it good?
Yeah.
Did it meet the needs? And then as you start to look at the forward, hey, where did I have good ones? Where did I have some wins, some losses, and you modify. Um, to Mon's great point about ISFSI, we'd be remiss without telling you, like, if you're in the training world and you're not part of the International Society of Fire Service Instructors, what are you doing? Join us, isfsi.org. Very, very, very inexpensive membership fees to be part of these discussions and be part of this collaborative effort to try to move the fire service forward through training. If you're going to be in Arizona at the end of this month, we will be in Scottsdale, Arizona for our fall instructor conference. It's all things on how to be a better fire service instructor. So it's all about how you can deliver the message that you have, because all of us have a message to deliver in the fire service, and you can deliver in a way that's going to be meaningful and impactful and change the world. So that's what we're all about, is, giving people the tools to be successful as the fire service and changing culture through training. So fellas, as always, it's great seeing you guys. It's great talking with you guys. Every time I'm around you guys, I feel just a little bit more enabled about being able to be good at this job, and it's just awesome. So, guys, without any further ado, we'll call it a day. And thanks again for the conversation. Thanks, Fire Engineering, for hosting us. And we'll see you guys in a couple months talking training again.